Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Ant-Man, starring Paul Rudd, Michael Douglas, Evangeline Lilly, Corey Stoll, Bobby Cannavale, Anthony Mackie, Judy Greer, and Michael Pena, and directed by Peyton Reed. Now before I get into this review, I must say I was kind of excited for this movie, but in a way when I saw this in theaters the first time, not that big of a crowd. And I can kind of see why after watching the movie, and this time I get it. So let's get into this. The very first scene is in 1989 with a much younger Dr. Hank Pym, played by Michael Douglas, which looked absolutely creepy, by the way. Like, it looked, I don't know, I can't explain it, just really creepy. Even with an older Peggy Carter returned by Haley Atwell, and an older Howard Stark from one of the Iron Man films. But my main focus was how creepy Douglas looked, but I do like when Mitchell talks about his dead wife Janet, like he killed her and he beats his face, but that scene was plain creepy in my opinion. Scott Lang, played by Paul Rudd, is getting out of jail and he gets a goodbye punch by Peachy, and the character has an arc, and I like his arc, and I like that, and his arc is to see his daughter. I like the scene when he was working at Baskin Robbins and he gets fired, and his boss Dale says Baskin Robbins always finds out. But I don't know how to feel about Rudd's character in general. I really like his friend Louis, played by Michael Pena, or Louise, excuse me. I think he's really funny and he has very good comedic timing. And it was humorous how he tells the stories about a perfect heist and all that. Darren Cross, played by Corey Stoll, is a pretty good villain who will at the end become Yellow Jacket, but he's probably the weakest villain in the entire Marvel Universe that I liked so far. Hank's daughter, Hope, played by Evangeline Lilly, is a spoiled character, and honestly, I don't like her in this movie. Another character I don't like is Paxton, played by Bobby Cannavale, because like Scott said, he's an asshat. But I don't know much about his ex-lover Maggie, played by Judy Greer, who I reviewed in the recent Planet of the Apes movies, and I like the actress, but I don't know about the character in general. I do, however, like his daughter Cassie. She was a nice presence, and her character is pretty adorable. I don't like the scene when Darren tries to shrink a baby sheep, and it ends up killing it. I thought, "Aw, what did the sheep ever do to you?" That scene made me sad. Not cry, but sad. I like when Scott puts on the suit and gets shrunk, and he's at a dance floor and starts running to the next floor on the vacuum, and I thought it was a lot of fun. I also like when he got arrested and as he puts on the suit and he escapes and flies on an ant. That was a load of fun too. The training when Hope thinks Scott isn't the right person for the job and she trains him as she's kicking his ass was funny. This movie has a sense of humor. Meanwhile, he names his aunt Anthony, and I really like him. And I also like their first mission when Hank doesn't realize it's the Avengers building and runs into the Falcon, returned by Anthony Mackie. And I really like seeing him in this movie for what little he does. When Scott brings Luis to the mission, Luis whistles "It's a Small World After All," and because it's a Disney movie, and they had to play this song, but the whole sequence was mostly an okay final battle to begin when Scott gets trapped by Cross in a small cage, but will eventually become big again, like a human-sized man, let me rephrase that. And that's when the final fight begins, and Cross gets to the helicopter and shoots Anthony, which I felt really bad for Anthony when he gets shot. And Hope and Hank get out of the building with a tank on a keychain. And Ant-Man versus Yellow Jacket, with Ant-Man destroying the Cross building and fight on the helicopter, and they land on the pool in a backyard house. And Scott gets arrested again by Paxton until Cross goes terrorizing Cassie until Scott comes in with the Ant Army and rides the Thomas the Tank Engine thing at the end of the movie. And Yellow Jacket talks too much while in a fight, and Scott tries to get Cross but big again, but turns an ant and Thomas the Train Giant. Was an okay fight, but the giant ant and Thomas was terrible humor in my opinion. And I honestly liked Thomas the Tank Engine as a kid. I don't know why they had to make that look so big. Scott, after destroying the Yellow Jacket, goes in a dream world, which I was confused by that sequence. Like, was he inside the suit of the Yellow Jacket, or was he in space? That was really confusing. So Scott and Hope are, after these events, in love, and I thought, when did this start? Like Hank said at that point. But is the sequel going to be about the end? About them? I'll find out this summer, but it was funny though. Stanley makes a cameo as Louise tells Scott about a girl whose contact works with the Avengers, but I felt it was a little too late, but it was just a fine cameo at best. Hank shows Hope the suit of the Wasp, and that was an exciting moment for the Marvel comic book fans. And she'll be a future Avenger and first, and we got her in the sequel later this summer, but the moment was pretty exciting. That was during the credits scene. After the credits is a scene from next week's movie, Captain America Civil War, where with Cap and Falcon got Bucky's hand on a machine to see that Cap and Falcon are on their own. It's probably better in Captain America Civil War than here, but I know why they put it here for Ant-Man reasons, but was unnecessary in my opinion. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 6.9 out of 10. I did have some problems with a few of the characters, but it's a fun movie at best, but he's probably the weakest character of this whole franchise, and it has a sense of humor. And I would watch it over Thor the Dark World, and it's a fun time at the movies. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next week I will be back with Captain America Civil War. Who am I going to choose to pick the winner of the fight? Well, I'll talk about that next week. And until next time, Avengers Assemble!